Hello and welcome. Tonight, the president formally unveils the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, says initiative will ensure energy security for the country. CBN Monetary Policy Committee raises benchmark interest rate to 14%, second time this year, as part of measures to tackle rising inflation. One of the two Catholic priests abducted on July 15 in Kaduna State, Reverend Father John Chetum, killed as his colleague, Reverend Father Donatus Cleopas, is freed by their abductors. On business news tonight, Central Bank Governor issues stern warning against illegal forex transactions to fund elections in the country.
On sports news tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari hails the gallant display of the Super Falcons against Morocco in the semi-finals of the African Women's Cup of Nations, says there are many positive outcomes for the team to take home.
And from Abuja, President Muhammadu Buhari directs the Minister of Education to explore ways of resolving the ongoing strike by university lecturers and report to him in 2 weeks. ASU says it's not backing down.
And in international news from London, Western Europe continues to see record-breaking temperatures as a ferocious heatwave pushes further north, causing chaos and wildfires across the continent.
And it's a new dawn for the nation as President Muhammadu Buhari today officially unveiled the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited at a landmark event that changes the oil firm from a state-run entity to a commercial oil company limited by shares. The new entity is expected to be managed as a private energy enterprise. The official unveiling in Abuja comes weeks after the corporation transitioned into a company whose operations will be regulated by the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Our energy correspondent, Olu Phillips, reports.
A lot of catching up to do here from players in this industry, project promoters, heads of agencies, bankers, IOCs, indigenous asset owners, and people from the gamut of services in the oil and gas industry. The venue, the State House, also underscores the magnitude of the step being taken in translating an enterprise that's always been state-owned into a commercial entity now stripped of sovereign guarantees for accessing funds.
Sharing agreement.
44 years after, the Nmpc Limited, courtesy of a new set of regulations called the Petroleum Industry Act, is being unveiled and to be charged to go start a new life in the world of global energy business space. Quite a lot of time was allowed for folks to interact, which eventually paved way for President Muhammadu Buhari to join this ceremony. Mr. President is the man of the moment, and proudly so. He has a history with the national oil company that is today transforming right before his eyes. And of course, he played a significant role both times.
We are transforming our petroleum industry to strengthen its capacity and market relevance for the present and future global energy priorities. The provision of PIA 2021 have given the Nigerian petroleum industry a new impetus with improved fiscal framework, transparent governance, enhanced regulation, and the creation of a commercially driven and independent national oil company.
And for the man who is the last group managing director of Nmpc as a corporation and the first group CEO of the new company, he will superintend over the company's large asset, which should give tangible value.
This indeed is a new day, a new hope and a new opportunity to upscale our relevance in the global energy community as Africa's largest energy company by deepening natural gas production to create low-carbon alternatives and possibly change the story of energy poverty at home. We have taken a strategic initiative to achieve our mandate of ensuring energy security for our country by rolling out a comprehensive expansion plan to grow our fuel retail presence from the 547 to over 1,500 outlets within the next 6 months.
By the books, we are told that owing to encumbrances of how the corporation was run, we lost about $70 billion inflow, and a reversal of such trend is what government seeks.
The Nmpc Limited will operate as a profitable commercial entity and declare dividends to its shareholders. The company will demonstrate higher levels of performance and accountability to continue to win the hearts of its over 200 million shareholders.
Then this icing. So what's the implication of the new Nmpc Limited on the nation's finances?
What it means to the fiscals of the Federation is that they will be paying to the government taxes, all categories of taxes that companies are to pay, and also be paying dividends to the government. What will be significantly different is that they will not be remitting to the Federation on a monthly basis revenue on sales. So we have to wait until their accounts are reviewed and audited, and we will work out a process how that will work in a seamless manner to make sure that the Federation is adequately funded.
And for the business community, who now have a new entrant and competitor?
You can't really compare us with the Nmpc. Nmpc is a much bigger, larger corporation with a lot of reserves in oil and gas, and really they are going to go up there and do quite well.
The countdown is on. The clock has started to tick. Africa's largest company has emerged. Still, the PowerPoint presentations should pave way for action points. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
On July 1, 2022, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited legally transformed into a company whose operations and activities are regulated under the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA. Well, this transformation follows the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. Our next report looks at the implication of this change and what Nigerians can expect from the new company. It's a new phase for the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited as it transits into a fully commercial entity. It all started with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act. This new dawn was ushered into Nigeria's oil and gas industry on August 2021, when the president signed the Petroleum Industry Bill into law, making it the historic Petroleum Industry Act 2021 after 2 decades of dashed hopes.
The meaning of this is that all our transactions will now be on the basis of the Petroleum Industry Act's provision, and also the Memorandum and Article of Association of the company, and all other enabling regulatory and institutional requirements that we need to put in place to make sure it works. So we're already in the Nmpc Limited situation. We have transferred our assets to the Nmpc Limited. We have also transferred our book of accounts into the Nmpc Limited. So the company is real. It is here, it is operating in the best of form, and of course it's going to evolve more and more until we become IPO ready by the mid of next year.
Established in 1977 as the largest asset holder within the Nigerian oil and gas industry, there have been several efforts to get to commercialize the company as the government seeks efforts to ensure it runs efficiently. The new identity means it has the same standing as global oil giants like Russia's Gazprom, Brazil's Petrobras, and Saudi Arabia's Aramco. The idea is that the company will evolve as a profitable commercial entity and declare dividends to its over 200 million shareholders.
The devil is still in the detail. The shareholding formula, how it pans out, what does the 200 million shareholders mean? What belongs to other tiers of government apart from the federal government, MOFI, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, and Ministry of Petroleum Affairs. All of those issues are still in the air. But for us, the right step has been taken, Mr. President.
Going forward, the new company will now be regulated by the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority and the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, in line with the provisions of the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Meanwhile, the successful emergence of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited as a commercially driven and independent entity is receiving commendation from some analysts. According to the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the country stands to benefit tremendously from the new company if there is no political interference on its operations.
It's a very significant milestone in the history of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. For me, this is also likely to be one of the major legacies of the present administration, because we now have a company, an Nmpc incorporated or whatever, that will now be independent, to be autonomous, and to be able to function within the framework of a proper corporate organization. And if you look, there are examples around the world. Saudi Aramco, I think, is the latest of such examples. Saudi Aramco now is the most valuable company in the world, with a value of about $2.43 trillion. That shows the kind of value that you can get if you have the right kind of legal framework for a company like the Nmpc, to make it independent and to make it autonomous. That way, be able to get a lot more value. And I'm looking forward to a situation where there will be minimum political interference in the new Nmpc. Minimum interference by the political actors, minimum interference by the bureaucracy. Because that is the only way it can earn the kind of credibility and the confidence of investors. I'm also looking forward to a situation where the Nmpc will be listed not just on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, even on the international stock exchanges.
Away from NNPC's new identity, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is canvassing the domestication of the Fisheries Subsidies Agreement in Nigeria to protect the nation's marine resources from harmful trade. The WTO boss was speaking at a meeting with the Minister of State for Industries, Trade and Investment in Abuja, where she explains that the move has become necessary following the height of illegal fishing practices that dominate territorial waters, depriving countries of benefiting from resources.
The Director General of the World Trade Organization makes her way into the conference hall of the Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investment in the company of officials of the ministry and the Nigerian representative at the World Trade Organization. This is her second official visit to Nigeria since she took the mantle of leadership at the WTO, and this visit is to further push for some negotiations reached at the Council of Ministers meeting last month.
Overfishing, illegal fishing, unreported fishing, we know it takes place on our waters. I'm looking at our colleague from the Naval Command and from the fisheries. This is a very big problem for the world. In 1970, 7% of fish stocks were overfished. By 2015, it was around 35 or so %. A recent study has shown that we are almost at 50% of overfishing of our fish stocks.
And then the discussion moves away from protecting the nation's water resources to improving trade, checking inflation, and how to improve supports for local industries.
Africa imports 99% of its vaccines and 95% of its pharmaceuticals. And for a continent of 1.4 billion people, this is not right.
The Minister of State for Industries, Trade and Investment speaks of how she is escalating decisions reached at the just concluded Council of Ministers meeting of a WTO, as well as other policies which will promote trade in Nigeria.
The ministry, in collaboration with relevant stakeholders, have met to specifically consider the agreement on fisheries subsidies and deliberated on how Nigeria can implement the agreement, while also taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the newly created WTO Fish Fund.
The revised draft agreement for the new global rules aims to curb harmful fishing subsidies and curtail post-harvest losses. Over 260 million people globally depend on fish resources.
In part two, after the break, CBN Monetary Policy Committee raises benchmark interest rate to 14% as part of measures to tackle rising inflation. We have the CEO of financial derivatives company, Mr. Bismarck Rewani, to examine this. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. The president formally unveils the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, says initiative will ensure energy security for the country. CBN Monetary Policy Committee raises benchmark interest rate to 14%, second time this year, as part of measures to tackle rising inflation. One of the two Catholic priests abducted on July 15th in Kaduna State, Reverend Father John Chetnum, killed as his colleague, Reverend Father Donatus Clopas, is freed by their abductors. And Western Europe sees more sweltering temperatures as a ferocious heat wave continues to cause chaos, with wildfires growing out of control. And for the second time this year, the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee has raised the benchmark interest rates by 100 basis points to 14%. This was announced today by the CBN Governor, Mr. Gordon Emefiele, at the end of the MPC's two-day bi-monthly meeting in Lagos. Our business correspondent, Ini John Mekwa, reports.
Advise you. You may go to your bank.
It's the office of the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor, but this time in Lagos State. It's the first time the MPC is meeting here since the regulator moved its headquarters to the Federal Capital Territory. But this does not change the unpleasant fact that economic parameters are not at its best.
It's almost costless, at least today.
At the May MPC in Abuja, the meeting adopted a hawkish stance, joining the rest of the world to hike the monetary policy rate. It went from 11.5% to 13%. Since then, inflation has moved from 17.71% for the month of May to 18.6% for June, a major consideration for the MPC. There's also the huge supply disruption occasioned by the ongoing war in Ukraine and fueling energy costs.
MPC did not even take any look at the issue of whether to hold rates constant or to loosen, because we know some people would have expected that having tightened last time by 150 basis points, some of the analysis with what I read is that, look, we should not continue to increase rates because it will increase cost of borrowing, cost of borrowing by borrowers. It may also weaken manufacturing output and the rest of them. We agree, and I believe, and I want to signal, the Monetary Policy Committee is very determined that if inflation continues at this rate, particularly aggressively, we would continue to tighten.
The CBN governor did not mince words when expressing the stance and future decision of the MPC. But even before now, economists have been reacting.
We've been having conversation of what is the assurance that increasing interest rate will actually deal with inflation and not cause a stagflation in the economy. But the MPC has said that it's also taking into cognizance the fact that the CBN is working on developmental financing, and that should be able to balance it.
Finding a balance is the motivation for the CBN's disbursement of 741 billion naira loans so far for the developments in agriculture. 130 billion naira to 176 hospitals, and rebate for the second quarter of 20 billion naira to exporters through the RT 200 program, which according to the regulator has generated about $3 billion as of June 2022.
The limit to what the monetary policy can do, there's a limit to how much you can use monetary policy to fight, the ills or correct the ills in the economy. What they can do, like I said, is looking at things like interest rates and trying to tinker with the currency. But it doesn't solve the problem. If you don't get the fiscal side of things correct, then you're going to continue to struggle with your monetary policy. Even if you were to raise rates today to say 20%, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you inflows coming into the country, because people who come in would still struggle to go out because you have issues on the currency side.
While some economists may not agree totally with the hiking of rates, the coming days will show how effective or not this approach is in dealing with inflation in Nigeria. Ini John Mekwa, Channels Television News.
To discuss this further, CEO, Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rawani, joins me now on the news at 10. It's good to have you.
Good evening.
All right. What do you make of the increase of the benchmark interest rate? And we're seeing that this is coming second in a row.
Yeah, after 70 months of no increase, you have two consecutive increases, cumulatively 2.5%. But the thing is that inflation has also increased by a much more significant rate. So you are lagging the independent variable, which is the inflation rate. But what's important to note is that the major considerations for this move at this time, there are things that are within the control of Nigeria and things that are outside the control. There's nothing we can do to alter the destiny of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. There's nothing we can do to alter the international price of gas. There's nothing we can do to alter the international price of wheat. The things you can do are the things within your control, which are your interest rate movement and the structure of your interest rates. What all these economists have been talking about is the nominal rate of interest, which is the anchor rate, we call it in monetary policy terms. But a ship without an anchor is going to drift. When we increased interest rates last time, when the Nmpc increased interest rate by 150 basis points, what happened to the general level of interest rates in Nigeria? They stayed flat. So that was just a anchorless ship, right? And so it didn't have any impact. The difference between the rates of interest, general level of interest, and the rate of inflation actually expanded. And that was the problem. If you look at every other market, Ghana, Kenya, United States, South Africa, the policy rate is always lower than the treasury bill, one-year treasury bill rate, not to talk about the bond rate. Now, in our case, the treasury bill rate for 1 year, for 3 months is 3.7%. The treasury bill rate for 1 year is basically about 7%, while inflation is at 18.6% and your policy rate is at 14%. So the policy rate is double the 1 year treasury bill rate. It doesn't make anything.
Is it just Nigeria that this is, it's affecting, that are having these based on the considerations as you've mentioned?
No, we use the rhyme of the Asian mariner. Inflation here, inflation there, inflation everywhere. You look at that, the slides there show you that in the United States, for example, inflation went from 8.9 to 9.1%, began to taper. In the UK, over 9%. Almost all the countries in the world, apart from China, where it's a bit of flatlining. So it's pervasive. It's a global phenomenon. So the difference before was that we had our own inflation, an outlier inflation situation. Today, we are in line with everybody, and the central bank has made this move. So cumulatively, 2.5%, aggressive, but you need to, it is during war that generals are made. We need to do something.
In terms of our inflationary rates, we've seen several projections, NBS, even the World Bank gave a projection which we exceeded. Is there like a true rate of inflation in Nigeria?
Very interesting question. You see, the first thing you have to know is that the official inflation is 18.6%. But the last time the basket that is used to measure inflation was reconstituted was 2009. The truth is that your consumer behavior in 2009 is not the same consumer behavior today. Typically, in most countries, every 5 years you reconstitute a basket to reflect the preferences of consumers. So we should have done it in 2014, we should have done it in 2019, and it's due for a third review. So if you look at the basket, you'll find that we try to reconstitute it in an ad hoc manner. When we reconsider, we increased the amount you spend on food from 51% to 53%. We increased the amount of housing by 16% to 17% of the weight. We increased that of communication because in 2009, how much did you spend on communication? Today, we increased that. Education, we increased that. Now, if you use the reconciliate basket, our own arbitrary reconciliate basket, it comes out inflation would have been 45% today. But that is just using the basket as structured by the NBS. But when you take our own synthetic basket, you find that inflation in the last 1 year in this synthetic basket went up by 84%. So yes, it's good to say inflation, annual inflation went up by 18%. You're comparing the price of something this year with what it was last year. But even that is wrong. Because, for example, flour last year was 15,000 naira, and now it's 27,000 naira, an increase of over 71%. Bread was 400 naira, it's now up to 900 naira, right? This was showing 700 here. Eggs were 1,200, it's now 2,000. Cooking gas, no, diesel, 245. It was 245 this time last year, it's now 800 and 850. So essentially, this is what's happening. So what are the main culprits, the main drivers of inflation? Two things. One, diesel. Diesel, 229% increase in diesel in the last 1 year. So you're spending 200 naira per liter. Now it's 800 naira. So what's happening? People are shutting down. People are closing, even banks are closing their offices in time. The next major culprit is the exchange rate. As of this afternoon, the exchange rate had gone, the parallel market was trading at 626 naira to a dollar and about 800 naira to a pound. When you look at these slides here, you will find that what we call the PPP, that is the purchasing power parity value of the naira, today is 649. In March this year, it was 590. What you could buy with 1,590 naira, right, could buy you the goods worth $1. Today, it's 649 naira in that market, while the parallel market is 626. So, the truth is one, diesel, two, the exchange rate. There are other factors, but that is what's driving the
CBN hopes that, this would tame rising inflation. Do you see this happening briefly?
No. First and foremost, the interest rates are a limited tool to deal with supply side, what we call supply shocks, right? Cost push inflation, interest rates actually alters the consumer preference of a man. So rather than spend money on goods, you save it, and that eventually reduces prices. So what is going to happen is that it will go a long way, and there's a time lag between when you have policies and when you get the impact. So there's no question about it. It is a good tool, but it's not a silver bullet. Nobody should think that it's going to happen. And what's happening is that because people are impatient, people are hungry, people are angry, people are desperate, and in a political season, you can see that anger and resentment playing out not only here, in Britain, in France, the United States, everywhere. There is anger against incumbents because people believe that this is their fault, while in fact it might not be.
Mr. Bismarck, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise into this very important issue. We appreciate your time on the News at 10.
It's my pleasure.
Still ahead on the News at 10, Central Bank Governor warns against illegal forex transactions to fund elections in the country. That's all business news. Join us again. Welcome back to Security, where one of the two abducted Catholic priests in Lere local government area of Kaduna State, Reverend Father John Chednum, has been killed by his abductors. The victim, who was the Director of Communications of the Catholic Diocese of Kafanchan, was killed on the same day he was abducted, July 15. His decomposing body was discovered today and has been deposited at the morgue. In a statement by the Catholic Diocese of Kafanchan, the other abductee, Reverend Father Donatus Cleopas, was fortunate to have escaped from the kidnappers and has been reunited with his family and parishioners. The clerics were kidnapped while they were on pastoral assignment at the rectory of Christ the King Catholic Church, Yadingaru, in Lere local government area. Let's head to Abuja, where Gloria Mozuke is standing by with more stories. Hi, Gloria. It appears the president is no longer comfortable with the protracted industrial action by university lecturers, which is why he has directed the Minister of Education, Mr. Adamu, to proffer a solution to the lingering impasse and report back to him in 2 weeks. Well, according to sources in the presidential villa, the president gave the directive today during a meeting with relevant MDAs where he received briefings on the current face-off with the university unions since February 14, 2022, among other issues. It was gathered that during the meeting, President Muhammadu Buhari placed priority on the issue of resolving the lingering ASU strike and directed that the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, as well as the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, must be in attendance in all the meetings to speedily resolve the crisis. It will be recalled that the president had on Monday last week in Daura told the Academic Staff Union of Universities that enough is enough and should, as a matter of responsibility, reconsider the position on the prolonged strike with a view to calling it off. Well, staying with the ASU strike, there is apparently no end yet in sight to the ongoing strike by university lecturers, as the leadership of the union says there is no going back until the federal government meets their demands. The position of the union was reiterated today at a news conference in Abuja by the leadership, who also accuses the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, of being an impediment to an amicable solution to the impasse, which has kept students out of the classroom for 5 months. The president of ASU, Professor Emmanuel Osodike, who later made an appearance on our program Politics Today, says if the government shows commitment, the industrial action will not last beyond 2 days.
Where we are, if we are serious, if we really want to resolve this problem, it should not take 2 days. And I will give you the reasons. All the issues have been discussed. Government negotiators have met with us. We have all of us a joint draft agreement for them to look at and come back to us and say sign. We are also waiting, and that happened on the 16th of June, more than a month ago. They've not come back. Does it take you 2 weeks to look at what you have negotiated? If there are issues, you go back to the committee and resolve them. Does it take you 2 weeks? The issue of the negotiation have been completed by both sides. Maybe that one is gone. Issue of salary, issue of negotiation, issue of funding.
So what is stopping it?
Good. That is, with that, so just come back to us and say, we have agreed, sign. Let's not take 2 days. My challenge, and I want to plead with the president. I want to plead with him on behalf of Nigerian children who cannot afford it, that the legacy he should leave behind this country is that he transformed Nigerian educational system. All right. I can do it with this our struggle.
Well, there's more. The leadership of the Trade Union Congress in Nigeria, TUC, is mobilizing its members to vote for the presidential candidate of Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, in the forthcoming general elections. At the opening of the union's delegate conference in Abuja, the TUC president, Comrade Quadri Olaleye, charges members to get their voter cards and play a significant role in electing the country's next president. The union also pledged its complete support for the Academic Staff Union of Universities that have been on strike for almost 5 months.
The president of the Trade Union Congress in Nigeria arrives at the International Conference Center in Abuja for the union's 13th Delegates Conference. Although the conference is primarily for the election of principal officers who will pilot the affairs of the union for another 3 years, it provides an opportunity for the leadership of the union to speak about the next general elections.
We commend our sister Labour Center, the Nigeria Labour Congress, and leader of the Labour Party for collaborating to resolve all issues that work against our reclaiming our country. We can no longer stand outcasts. Comrades, the mobilization is in top gear. The Labour Party has a presidential candidate and likewise other political parties. We therefore urge Nigerians to vote wisely.
Other invited guests also used the occasion to appeal for an intervention into the prolonged strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities. Meanwhile, the Trade Union Congress is pledging its solidarity with the striking university lecturers as it decries government's poor attention to the country's education sector.
The Congress is solidly behind ASU in solidarity and with NLC in the call for protests coming up in the next few days, and we continue to advocate for the restoration of sanity in the sector.
We are all aware that some challenges, especially with the ASUs, as the labor and the government. I want to use this forum that the two parties, I want to urge us, please, let's shift our ground so that the government should come in to see whereby our lecturers go back to their classrooms.
The Academic Staff Union of Universities has been on strike since 14th of February this year over welfare issues and poor infrastructure in the universities. Although several negotiation meetings have been held, none has been able to resolve the impasse, even as more unions outside the education sector continue to solidarize with the lecturers.
Well, away from the industrial action to politics, there's been more endorsement for Labour Party, and this time, literary icon Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has thrown her weight behind the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and his running mate, Dati Baba Ahmed. She gave the endorsements today in a statement in which she congratulated the former Anambra State governor, who clocked 61. Her statement reads, "I cannot wait for February 25, 2023, when I, with personal pride in you and with hope for what Nigeria can become, will cast my vote for you and your running mate, Senator Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed," unquote. The 44-year-old author adds that she admires the former governor's intellectual curiosity, his eagerness to learn, and his genuine love for education. The All Progressives Congress APC will be unveiling Senator Kashim Shettima as presidential running mate to Bola Tinubu tomorrow, Wednesday, July 20. This was communicated in a statement posted on its verified Twitter handle, which notes that the former Borno State governor will be formally unveiled at the Shehu Yar'Adua Center in Abuja. The party's presidential flag bearer, Mr. Bola Tinubu, had on July 10 announced the former governor of Borno State as his running mate, following the resignation of Ibrahim Masari, who served as a placeholder. The announcement of Mr. Shettima, who currently represents Borno Central in the Senate, had generated a lot of outcry from different quarters, particularly within the APC. Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Millicent. Thanks, Gloria. And still ahead of the general elections, the national chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, says the commission is working to build on the successes recorded from the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections to deliver a credible exercise in 2023. While speaking during a courtesy visit by a delegation from the International Republican Institute and the National Democratic Institute, the chairman says the commission has learned from each of its outings and improved on issues raised, hence the recent successes it has achieved. And it's time for some business news. Here's Anne Wilder.
Thank you very much, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. We'll begin with Nigeria's Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele warning the perpetrators of illegal banking transactions in Nigeria. Mr. Emefiele, who made this known today at the end of the Central Bank's Nmpc's meeting, says that those involved in such activities will be severely penalized.
From Central Bank, we monitor liquidity in the system, and as we see that there's excess liquidity, we will continue to use our discretionary powers to move those liquidity from the vault of the banks so that they do not get involved or in speculative activities with people who want to speculate with the currency, or those who want to. As for those who want to buy, take naira from their account to buy dollar because of election, I want to warn not advise, that it is illegal to do so, whereas it will sound more convenient that you should carry dollars, because you can carry just little dollars but with a lot of value in your pocket. But if the security agencies hold you, you know the implication of that.
Twitter has won an early victory in its legal battle against Elon Musk after a Delaware judge approved the social media company's request to fast-track the trial. The judge, who set the 5-day trial to take place in October, says that Twitter deserves a quick resolution of the deal's uncertainty. Last week, Twitter had filed a lawsuit against billionaire Elon Musk after he cancelled the $44 billion buyout of the social media platform. The ruling is a blow to Musk, who had requested that to investigate his claims that Twitter has misrepresented the number of fake or spam accounts. Let's head to the equities market, where yesterday's bullish performance was reversed at the NGX All-Share Index. It dropped by 0.02%. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, the positive start we saw to the week is short-lived as equities take a mild pullback with a 6 billion naira wiped off the market cap. Could say this dip is related to the Monetary Policy Committee decision meeting today as the Nmpc raised rates by 100 basis points, taking the cost of borrowing higher in order to fight rising inflation. Well, the sectoral performance is mostly green today, with the banking and consumer index in the red. An analyst I spoke to said it's just market forces what at play here. Looking at the top gainers counter, we see RT Briscoe up 10%, locking a 4 naira gain to its share price to close at 44 kobo, while Multiverse Japan Gold hit the bottom shelf. Not an impressive day in the market today, but a comeback could be in the offing tomorrow. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams.
And that's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawodu. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Millicent. Thank you, Anne. The London Fire Brigade has declared a major incident in the British capital in response to the surge in fires amid a record-breaking heat wave in the country. Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany are also seeing temperatures soar, while wildfires still threaten parts of southwest France and Spain. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Western Europe has seen more sweltering temperatures as a ferocious heat wave has continued to cause chaos, with wildfires growing out of control. 2 people were killed by forest fires in Spain's northwestern Zamora region, and trains in the area were halted because of fire near the tracks. What's he doing? This is the dramatic scene captured by one commuter on his way to work. Deadly wildfires in France and Greece have also forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes. More than 30,000 people have had to flee their homes in France, with emergency shelters set up for evacuees. Meanwhile, the UK hit its highest ever temperature of 40.2 degrees, according to provisional Met Office figures, the first time it has ever gone above 40 degrees before in the country. People doing the best they can to continue life as normal, even the Queen's beefeaters maintaining guard outside Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, the German foreign minister says a climate dialogue held in Berlin was meant to help countries achieve their important climate goals, as the world is not on track to achieve 1.5 degrees.
Dear Sami,
Annalena Baerbock was speaking one day after she and her Egyptian counterpart, Sameh Shoukry, hosted the so-called Petersburg Climate Dialogue.
This has been a painful year in a painful decade.
It comes as Prince Harry used a speech on Mandela Day at the United Nations to highlight his climate change concerns.
Our world is on fire, again. And these historic weather events are no longer historic. More and more, they are part of our daily lives. And this crisis will only grow worse.
13 prisoners have been killed at a prison in the Ecuadorean city of Santo Domingo in the latest incidents of deadly jail violence in the Andean country. The government attributes prison violence to fights between gangs over control of territory and drug trafficking routes. Last year, 316 prisoners died during riots in various prisons across the country. The police and the armed forces were retaking control of the penitentiary. It earlier called the incident a dispute. Russian President Vladimir Putin has visited Iran in just his second foreign trip since he launched the invasion of Ukraine in February. Mr. Putin will meet Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. A Turkish official said grain exports, Syria and Ukraine will be discussed in Tehran. The Russian leader has limited his international visits to former Soviet states since war broke out in Ukraine. The liberal-leading Russian independent TV station TV Rain has resumed broadcasting after being forced to shut its Moscow studio following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. TV Rain, portrayed in the 2021 film Tango with Putin, was visited and praised in 2011 by the then-president Dmitry Medvedev when it was just a year old. But like all Russian independent media, it has been harassed relentlessly since Vladimir Putin returned to the presidency in 2012. It said it has now received a European Union broadcasting license and would be working from studios in Latvia, France and the Netherlands. Drone footage shows the extent of the damage to crops and homes in India's western Gujarat state, where at least 7,000 hectares of land have been flooded, severely damaging crops. Incessant rain in Navsari district caused the Puma, Kaveri and Ambika rivers to overflow, which led to the loss of life, properties and livelihoods, as well as the destruction of crops. Rescue workers have used rubber dinghies to reach flood victims and take in essential supplies. And finally, Aston Martin is bringing back a blast from the past to celebrate 100 years at the French Grand Prix.
Well, I think it's going to be very, very special.
Ahead of Sunday's race around Circuit Paul Ricard, four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel will take the team's original car, the TT1, affectionately known as Green P, for a celebratory lap. The cars were built by founder Lionel Martin following a commission by wealthy young motor racing driver and pioneer Count Louis Zorowski, who invested £10,000 in their construction. Vettel says he's very excited to put Green P through its paces.
It's crazy to imagine how long it's been around, but great to see that it's still there, and I'm very much looking forward to get behind the wheel. I guess it will be very, very different to what I'm used to.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. President Muhammadu Buhari has commended the gallant display of Nigeria's Super Falcons against the Atlas Lionesses of Morocco in the semi-finals of the African Women's Cup of Nations. The 9-time African champions, despite playing with 9 players, held the Moroccan ladies to a 1-1 draw and took the game to penalties, losing out 5-4. Meanwhile, the Super Falcons have returned to Casablanca ahead of Friday's third-place match against Zambia. This is only the third time the most successful women's African team, the Super Falcons, will be playing in a third-place playoff in the history of the Women's African Cup of Nations. German champions Bayern Munich have signed Dutch defender Matthias de Ligt from Juventus on a deal until 2027. Juve confirmed the centre-back was signed for a fee of 67 million euros, rising up by a potential 10 million euros based on performance-related bonuses. And that's a wrap. When Sports News is back to Millicent.
Thanks, Victor. And the main news again. President Muhammadu Buhari today formally unveiled the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. He said the initiative will ensure energy security for the country. Also today, the CBN Monetary Policy Committee raised benchmark interest rate to 14%, the second time this year, as part of measures to tackle rising inflation. That's News at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.